Hello friends, this is Tim Collins coming to you again with our weekend word. Today I want to talk about a very interesting story from Genesis chapter 22 where Abraham sacrificed his son. Beginning at verse 6, Genesis 22:6, Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And I'm very interested in Abraham's response. Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. God had promised Abraham a son that would carry on the covenant that God had made with Abraham. This promise had happened 25 years before Isaac was born. And Isaac was the one that, the son that Abraham loved, that he was the son of the promise. He was the son that would receive the covenant, and the covenant was passed down through him for generations to come. And then God said, "Sacrifice your son." And Abraham set out to sacrifice Isaac. Now, Abraham believed that God would not lie. God had made a covenant that had to be fulfilled through Isaac. And so Abraham knew that even if he sacrificed Isaac, God had a plan. And if you look over in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17, it says, "By faith Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had received the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, 'It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned.'" Okay, so he had received this promise. He knew that Isaac was the one that would be the fulfillment of that promise, and yet he obeyed God to sacrifice him because, look what the writer of Hebrews says, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, verse 19, "Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead." And figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. So you see, Abraham obeyed God, even though he didn't understand. He had a promise from God that God would fulfill through Isaac. And yet when Abraham said, "Sacrifice your son," he sent to sacrifice him, went about sacrificing him, because he knew that God, one way or another, would still fulfill his promise. The only thing, I guess, that Abraham could conceive of that God could do to fulfill that promise would be raise Isaac back from the dead. Of course, you know the rest of the story. God had provided a ram that was caught in a thicket there. Just as Abraham raised his knife over the chest of his son to sacrifice him, an angel stopped him and pointed out the ram caught in the thicket. Abraham hadn't thought of that. You see, a lot of times, because we can't conceive of a way that God can keep his promise, we turn our back on the promise too many times. We'll say, "Well, there's just no way it can happen," and we'll give up on it. But God's got a plan. Even if he has to raise somebody from the dead, God is going to keep his promise. It's kind of, I think of those Super Bowl parties and whatever. You bring the chips, and I'll bring the drinks, and you bring the sandwiches. And this case, it was Abraham, you bring the fire and wood, God will bring the lamb. God's going to keep his promise. Even when you don't understand, trust him. Hope you'll be in church somewhere tomorrow, worshiping God in spirit and in truth. Remember, we love you. God bless you.